Ancient Greece is often celebrated for its philosophy, democracy, and art, but its sexual customs were just as fascinating and sometimes bizarre. From sacred prostitution to philosophical debates on love, the Greeks had a radically different approach to sexuality than modern societies. And in this video, you'll learn the most shocking facts about sex in ancient Greece. Sacred prostitution, sex as a religious duty. In ancient Greece, sex wasn't just a physical act. It could also be a sacred ritual. Some temples, particularly those dedicated to Aphrodite, the goddess of love, employed hierodules, sacred prostitutes, who engaged in sex as part of religious worship. The most famous example was the Temple of Aphrodite in Corinth, where thousands of prostitutes worked and their earnings funded the temple's operations. Historians debate whether these women were truly priestesses or simply exploited workers, but their role was culturally significant. Some Greeks believed that having sex with a temple prostitute would bring divine favor, fertility, or even victory in war. The famous Greek historian Strabo claimed that Corinth's wealth was built on its sacred prostitution trade. This practice blurred the lines between religion and commerce, showing how deeply intertwined sex was with spirituality in Greek society. Pederasty, the controversial mentor-student relationships. One of the most misunderstood aspects of Greek sexuality was pederasty, a socially accepted relationship between an older man, Erastes, and a teenage boy, Eromenos. Unlike modern pedophilia, this was an institutionalized practice meant to educate young men in politics, warfare, and philosophy. The relationship was supposed to be non-exploitative, with the older man acting as a mentor. However, physical intimacy was often expected, and some philosophers, like Plato, debated whether these relationships should remain platonic. The practice was common among the elite, particularly in Sparta and Athens, where it was seen as part of a boy's transition into manhood. While modern views condemn such relationships, in ancient Greece they were normalized, though not without critics. Some playwrights, like Aristophanes, mocked pederasty in comedies, showing that even the Greeks had mixed feelings about it. Sex toys, ancient Greek innovations. The ancient Greeks were pioneers in many fields, including sex toys. Archaeologists have found dildos made of wood, leather, and even stone dating back to the 6th century BCE. These weren't just for pleasure, some were used in fertility rituals. One of the most famous references comes from Aristophanes' comedy Lysistrata, where women joke about using olive-oiled leather straps as substitutes for their absent husbands during war. Greek medical texts also mention devices for sexual stimulation, proving that the concept of sex toys is far from modern. Interestingly, some historians believe that the Greeks may have even invented early vibrators, using hollowed-out objects filled with bees to create vibrations, though this theory remains debated. Public sex and the symposia parties. Greek symposia, drinking parties, were wild affairs where sex was often part of the entertainment. Wealthy men reclined on couches, drank wine, and were entertained by heterai, high-class courtesans, who performed music, danced, and sometimes engaged in sex with guests. Unlike common prostitutes, heterai were educated women who could discuss philosophy and politics, making them desirable companions. Some, like Aspasia, mistress of Pericles, even influenced powerful men. These parties weren't just about pleasure, they were social and political events where alliances were formed. However, they also had strict rules. Excessive drunkenness or public nudity outside certain festivals was frowned upon. Herms, giant phallic statues for good luck. The Greeks had no shame when it came to celebrating male sexuality. Streets and doorways were often guarded by herms, stone pillars topped with the head of Hermes and featuring an erect phallus. These weren't just vulgar decorations. They were believed to ward off evil spirits and bring prosperity. In 415 BCE, Athens was thrown into chaos when Vandals mutilated the city's herms before a military expedition. The act was seen as a bad omen, leading to mass paranoia and political purges. This shows how deeply sexuality was embedded in Greek culture. Even their superstitions revolved around sex symbols. Ancient Greek sexuality was complex, blending religion, politics, and social customs in ways that shock modern sensibilities. From sacred prostitution to philosophical debates on love, their views on sex were far more open and sometimes controversial than today's standards.